and that's a good person to talk to about it, and the District Attorney, Scott McNamara. That's the problem with vigilantism, right? We never seem to completely get the story complete, and sometimes innocent people are victimized because of it. Scott, good morning.
Good morning, Bill.
I was wondering, could you answer this? I mean, is it what if somebody walked into a bank with a mask on and they were just taking money out?
Well, I wouldn't recommend that.
We can leave it at that. I just wouldn't recommend that.
I think it would depend on a lot of things. I mean, it would depend if they were trying to scare the tellers,
right.
Or, I mean, obviously people do crazy things like that on Halloween. Yeah. Unfortunately, we've had some things like that before.
Okay, so on the situation with this adult home and the Maggots, you were in the news yesterday talking about the fact that you had done an investigation there and did not find anything criminal. Is that the case?
Sure. The state police did a full investigation. The Justice Center, which is their main office is in Albany, did a full investigation. We took a very hard look at the entire situation, and like with most people, when you hear the headline, maggots in trachea tube, it's disturbing.
Yeah,
I mean, it's very, as it was for us when we first got it. But what we try to do, and we try to do in this case, in every case, is let's find out what the facts really are before we, run off and get crazy. And that's what we did. And what we were able to find out after a very lengthy investigation was that on June 17th, the person that's in the persistent vegetative state, his first name's Steven.
Yeah.
On the 17th, his father had went to the state, and he is a very strong advocate for his son, and he has advocated for his son all along. Well, he went to the state, and he said that he wanted his son to be taken outside twice a day because his son enjoys nature and wants to be outside.
Yeah. So
the state modified on that date or around that date his maintenance plan, and I guess that would be the way I would describe it. Basically, how are they going to maintain this gentleman's body, and the condition that he's in? So up until that point, he was never taken outside. But at his father's request and insistence, they then changed his plan so that he would be taken outside twice a day for no less than 15 minutes. And he was. From that day forward, according to all the records we have, he was taken outside twice a day with the exception of 3 days. 2 days it was because weather didn't permit it. And the third day there was an emergency at another facility that they didn't have I guess they didn't have someone to take him out or whatever the situation was. But so basically from the 17th of June until July 8th, they did what his father requested. Now, inside of the group home, which the state calls an IRA, inside of the home, obviously you can control the environment. In particular, you can control flies. Outside, you can't. So if you and I were having this conversation right now, sitting outside, one of us would be probably swatting a fly away at some point. That's how it is at this time of the year.
I have to tell you, we spoke with the father yesterday, and he clearly does not believe that. And feels
I do believe it based upon what we saw.
Yeah,
and so they take he can believe what he wants to believe. I know what it's like to sit outside in the middle of July. If you know where this home is, it's it's near farmland. Okay, so I grew up on a farm, so I'm very familiar with all these things. So it isn't like I have to imagine any of this.
He's saying that they said that the farmer had spread manure, and that of course attracted the flies. But then he told us that the farmer has not spread manure on that field for several years.
I don't. The manure doesn't even come into play because you don't need manure for flies.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Flies are just something we all deal with in the summer around here. As a matter of fact, as I'm sitting here looking at you, I can see a fly on the outside of the screen of the window I'm looking out.
Right.
So, I mean, but the bottom line is the gentleman, Steven, was taken outside at the father's request twice a day. Okay, and what appears to happen is that a fly must have landed around the trachea tube. The trachea tube is surrounded by like a sponge material, which prevents the tube itself from, basically rubbing against his skin. And if you've ever seen somebody that has a trachea, and I know someone who ultimately died of lung cancer who actually, I won't go into details, but it is an area that is moist, and it, that's just what it is.
Breeding ground, a perfect breeding ground for
fly.
Yeah,
for fly larvae, which are what people call maggots.
Yeah.
So the bottom line is, it appears from our entire investigation that that's most likely what happened. There are other people in that facility that all have trachea tubes that did not have any of these problems, and those people weren't taken outside. So what's the one factor? And it just makes common sense.
Got it.
And the other thing we looked at was his records. And there's multiple nurses that tended to him. So you have different handwriting because 3 times a day his trachea tube the dressing is changed. So and that is by 3 different nurses typically because of their shifts. And so when you look at the records, you see different handwriting, you see the time that they were changed. There was a plan in place, and there was nothing that we discovered, nothing when we looked into it, because what's being put out there now, which is kind of sad, especially for the workers, that somehow or another this is just a cesspool of filth. That's not what we found. What we found is, that there was a situation where, obviously a fly got near his trachea tube, laid eggs, and it's unfortunate, and it is disgusting, and it is disturbing, but it's not the nurse's fault. It's not. I mean, if you go back and figure out whose fault it is, I mean, it's kind of like if you let somebody go outside in the sunshine and they get a sunburn. Well, whose fault is it? Is it the sun's, or is it the person that put the person outside?
So you feel this home is being unfairly demonized.
I think the employees are being unfairly demonized now. I mean, we took a hard look at this, and what everybody's doing right now in the public. And I've seen all the comments, and people are, this is disgusting. This place needs to be shut down. I mean, we felt the same thing when we first heard the report, that headline, maggots on trachea tube. It's disturbing. Yeah. Okay, but when you really look into it and you really dig into it and see what was taking place and what happened, it's not that. It's not that this place is filthy. It's not that this place that they weren't taking care of them. It's just unfortunate. It's just like, for example, I know someone that just got MRSA. Nothing happened. He just happened to be someplace where there was MRSA, and he had an open wound. Yeah. It wasn't. I mean, he's a really good kid, really clean. Accidents happen, and that's probably what happened here.
Tell me, someone in Brindisi is asking for an investigation that the federal government should be coming in. A federal agency should be looking into this because, in the name of transparency, we have a state agency looking into a state facility. So, do you feel?
I understand. I understand what the Assemblyman's doing.
Yeah.
I just say this. Okay, and this is the problem that we all have when these things happen, including myself. Until this thing went public, I'm not going to issue a report, and because you have issues with, these are private matters with personnel, okay, so you have personnel issues of the people that work for the state that were at issue until this thing broke in the AP. You also have, you have privacy interests of the people being treated. Yeah. I mean, until this goes public, until the father took this story to the media, I mean, I think it would be highly inappropriate if I start giving press conferences and press releases about a gentleman who was in a terrible car accident that left him brain dead. And these things shouldn't be made public unless somebody wants them to be made public, and that's what happened in this case. The father wanted to make this public, but I don't think it's appropriate for me every time I do an investigation and deem that, and let me tell you something, the group homes, the prisons, any place that takes care of people, whether it's because they're confined or because of mental health or whatever the case might be, where the state's involved in housing these people, are subject to the jurisdiction of the Justice Center. On a normal day, I get at least one report that the Justice Center is looking at something. Many times those reports are unfounded, totally unfounded. I mean, typical things we'll see is somebody with a mental health issue will claim that somebody molested them, and they'll blame it on somebody who wasn't even working the day that they claimed that it happened. But we look into all those things. But if I wrote a press release every single time we cleared somebody, first of all, you put out there that there was an investigation.
Right. The minute that which is people condemn. It's just human nature. I mean, the last thing anybody ever wants to be done is charged with, falsely charged with pedophilia or something like that. Because once that's out there, it's a cloud that will cannot take it back. Even with and I will ask you this too: when you say something is found, is it unfounded when you look into these things, or can you say it absolutely is not true? Because in some cases, I know of situations where people have reported something to the county on maybe a sexual issue with children, and they investigate, and there's nothing there. Is it that there's nothing there, or potentially it's just nothing provable?
It goes both ways.
It can go both ways.
Sometimes we find things that just are not true. They are lies. Sometimes we have people, unfortunately, that falsely report something intentionally to get somebody in trouble. We sometimes have people that report something because they believe they saw something, or that they, so for example, they might see something in a store, or they might see their neighbor doing something with a child next door that looks one way, but when you look into it, it might not be neglect. And, so, I mean, it depends on each case. In this case, I would say it's unfounded. We just didn't find what the headline would lead you to believe you're going to find. I mean, to be honest, when this first came in and when I first got the report, I was thinking to myself, oh, my goodness, what kind of facility is this? I mean, I, like most people, started to think that they weren't taking proper care of this gentleman, that this was about negligent and taking care of somebody who obviously can't take care of himself. That's not what we found, and I don't think it's fair to the people that work there. And that's why when I was asked yesterday if I would talk about it, I said yes, because I don't think it's fair to those people. When we did do a thorough investigation, the state police did a thorough investigation, the Justice Center went so far as to hire somebody to look at, and this is what they reported to me. Okay, so I wasn't actually part of it, but they reported to me that they actually hired somebody, and they actually studied how long it takes fly larvae to hatch into what people typically call maggots. So, I mean, because what they were looking at,
what's the answer to that, by the way?
Looking at, I can't remember what they told me, but it was a number between 24 and I think 48 hours. A very short period of time.
All right.
But what we were looking at was to make sure that it wouldn't be a period of time that would have taken us back before June 17th. You see, what we're trying to figure out was if it was something that happened while he was taken outside. But just to try to blame it on cow manure, that's not. Cow manure isn't the only thing that draws flies.
I get that. And so I think the takeaway this morning is it's not that you didn't discover anything. You're saying you personally believe, and your department believes that these charges are unfounded.
We find them unfounded, and we didn't find anything. We didn't find any. What we found, absolutely no indication that this gentleman was not. I'm trying to say it in the negative, but the bottom line is we didn't find anything that would suggest that they weren't taking care of this person properly. As a matter of fact, all the reports. You can look at them. You can see they document these things. And once again, it's documented by numerous people. And this is just a perfect example of what we looked at. When this was first discovered, it was discovered by a nurse when she was changing the dressing. They immediately, no delay, not days delay, weeks delay, trying to cover up, oh, my God, what are we going to do now? Just the opposite. They immediately called Steven's father. They immediately called their supervisors, and they made arrangements to take him to a hospital. The father insisted that he be taken to St. Joe's Hospital, so they did what the father requested. just like taking them
Yep.
outside at the father's request.
Yep.
They took them to St. Joe's. When they got to St. Joe's in Syracuse, St. Joe's told them, we do not have the proper specialist here. You need an ENT specialist. There's one on call right now at Upstate. So they then had to move him from St. Joe's to Upstate. He was at Upstate. He was taken on the late afternoon of the 8th of July. Upstate didn't find any maggots when they looked at him. They kept him overnight. After they kept him overnight and they felt that there was no issue, they then sent him back to the home. The very next nurse that treated him, which when he got back, the sponge or the gauze around his trachea had to be, as I said, 3 times a day.
Mm-hmm.
So the nurse goes in, and she finds him again. So she was like, oh, my God, they're still here. They immediately put him in an ambulance and sent him back to Upstate Medical Center. So when everyone makes it sound like it happened 2 times, and it was one incident, and he was sent back from the hospital, and there was no signs of it. And unfortunately, when he got back, I don't know, and that's one of the things we were looking at, the gestation period of, how long does it take for the eggs to hatch. He was outside on the 8th. He was outside in the morning on the 8th. He was outside on the 7th, on July 7th. He was outside twice that day, both times for a half an hour. That's what we were looking at, and, but it is terrible. And, and I know the Justice Center and the state has worked very hard to try to make sure that nothing like this happened again. We were told that there's only 8 reported incidents of this ever happening before. It's not something that everyone would say, hey, listen, don't do that because it's bad. There just wasn't something nobody foresaw in that by taking him outside that this could possibly happen.
I really appreciate the fact that you...
In the future, people probably won't take people that have trachea tubes outside.
I appreciate the fact that you want this out there, and based on not just what the facility is going through, but what the employees of the facility the caregivers of the facility are going through. So I appreciate that. And Scott, as always, thank you for you always lay it right out there for us. And sometimes... this is, I never imagined we'd be talking about maggots, but here we are.
Yep. Well, thanks for having me on.
I appreciate it. Scott McNamara, thank you. Oneida County District Attorney. Boy, interesting. And how many times have we heard him say to us, be careful jumping to conclusions.
Yeah.
Before you know.
To you. No, I'm just kidding.
You're right. You're right. He might have said that to me a few times. Maybe. Aggressively, a couple times. It's live and learn. Very interesting, though, huh?